We're at a very important moment, not only in American history, but in this election cycle. All right, there's been the switcheroo at the top. There's been the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. There has been all sorts of lawfare. There's been lots of major disputes over election integrity. By the way, Republicans winning most of those lawsuits, one after the other, right all the way up to the Supreme Court. And now people are taking stock of what they're going to go into the November election with. Is it Donald Trump? Is it Kamala Harris? And a lot of people I'm talking to are thinking, I have no idea who Kamala Harris is, and she doesn't seem to want to tell me. I thought I'd bring in one of, I think, the keenest observers I know in politics anywhere. He's a former clerk to an appellate court judge. He is the former chief investigator for one of the key oversight committees in Congress. He's a former assistant secretary of state under the George W. Bush administration. And today, he has the high perch of being the national spokesman of our good friends at AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. Yep, it's Wednesday. It's AMAC Wednesday. We're bringing in our good friend, Bobby Charles. Bobby, good to have you back on the show.
John, I love these conversations. I always think that somehow unexpectedly we dig up things even in the course of the conversation that we didn't think we were going to find.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly it. That's it. I think when you look at the first 40 days of Kamala Harris, and this isn't my thing, it's actually what I'm hearing from lots of people. I even ran into a guy last night at Lowe's and I was picking up a part I needed late last night. That she is projecting weakness, lack of self-confidence in herself, 40 days without an interview, needs Tim Walz for the first interview, even though it's going to be a softball with CNN, wanted notes, sitting down and mic open, to change the rules of the debate because she didn't feel comfortable debating like most candidates debate. Do you think, and also, hasn't really given us any sense of her policy and substance. Do you think everyday American voters are starting to get a sense that, hey, this candidate feels like she's got something to hide?
You know, I think, John, that most people understand that the presidency is the most important job, arguably, in the country. And I think we know from our history, however little of it was taught to us in our various levels of education, that a president has to be really prepared to do two things in a republic, and particularly in our republic, but really in any republic. The first is they have to dig into a deep treasure trove of life experience, and they have to make decisions that we count on them to make wisely. And secondly, they have to communicate, constantly bring the American people along, prepare us if they're thinking about something that is untoward or difficult to digest. I mean, Franklin Delano Roosevelt took forever to tell the American people that he really needed to think about, we need to think about going to war. Ronald Reagan was always very candid about what it was we were up against with the Soviet Union. So there are two jobs that a president has. One is to be deeply seasoned in the Dwight Eisenhower kind of way in terms of life experience that's meaningful and making good decisions. And the second is communicating to the American people. I think if you look at Kamala Harris and even Walz, you look at them and you say, okay, how about that first one? Well, there isn't a lot of there on the first one. So you're already weak. It's an observable fact. There is not enough life experience here and depth and gravitas. And I'm not even talking about, the giggle-a-rama that we get treated to anytime she's in front of a camera. There's not enough depth of life experience to make people feel comfortable. And the second piece of it is that for 40 days, she has not, for the entirety of her of her sort of fake nomination, where she, where they whipped the tablecloth out from underneath all the glasses and Biden was thrown away, and we get this new candidate. In that entire period, she has done no press conference. So the second most important thing that a president does, which is to communicate, is completely missing. So to your question, does the average person, and I have friends who are liberals as well as conservatives, do they see this? Yes, they do. And what they will do with what they see is really the next question. But the truth be told, they understand that there's vacuousness here, that there's a I think of these two people, Harris and Walz, as sort of the traditional old science fiction shapeshifters. You look at them and you're supposed to see what you are hoping to see. Sort of an empty vessel, fill it up with whatever you want. But I think there is a moment in time when, as in all of the traditional stories with that kind of character, when it becomes obvious that there is no there, that this is really a chameleon, that this is a couple of people who are essentially, and in this case, very left-leaning, who are trying to kind of cloak their left-leaningness and give you the opportunity to believe that their laughter and giggly poo, talking to each other over a table in which they feed each other softball questions, the only public really candid thing they've done since this nominating process, is somehow going to make you happy enough that you'll vote for them. And I don't think it's passing muster. I honestly, John, I talk to people who are, and then you add in the RFK Jr. endorsement of Trump and Trump including Tulsi Gabbard, and you begin to see people saying, one side is voting for something and the other side is voting for nothing.
Yeah, no, that's a really great analogy. And it's that lack of substance. Even the New York Times called it out this week. I think you see some of even the Democratic pundits on the network starting to worry that, hey, this is way too long to not know where she stands. And she did put a couple small things out, right? She tried to appropriate Donald Trump's no tax on tips plan. She tried to appropriate the border wall. She's actually using Donald Trump's border wall in her ads, even though she once called it a stupid vanity project. The idea that their only ideas are those that are coming from Donald Trump, that's probably not helping her either, right?
Well, to me, this goes right to the shapeshifter point. This is pretend that if you really think we should have a wall, and you really think that those who work 2 jobs and 3 tips shouldn't be taxed. Incidentally, the exact policy that she put forward with Biden. If you really believe that, you've got a choice: go with the authentic inventor of those ideas, or go with someone who thinks that, I understand that, imitation is the highest form of flattery, but I think that was Oscar Wilde. But in the end, honestly, John, I can't believe a single word that comes out of their mouth, because they've lied so many times that it's really not even, I literally come to the conclusion that everything they say is likely to be untrue. And I think the average person watching that kind of chameleon-like behavior says, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think she's committed to a wall. I don't think she's committed to giving the average American tax breaks. In fact, everything she's talking about, wage and price controls, which means rationing of things, more policies that push high inflation, which in turn push high interest rates, all of these things are what people are groaning under right now. They're the weight on their shoulders, John. I live in Maine. I'm in D.C. all the time. You and I are going to be in New York here in a week. But the reality is people everywhere in this country are suffering, and it is not a joke. And it is a very serious thing. I walk into homes and I see all the signs of people struggling, and I think that these two people are clowns. They truly don't appreciate what the average American goes through, because they've lived a very removed life, and their attitude is, we're going to tell you from top down what to do. We're not going to listen to you from bottom up. Whereas Trump listens from bottom up everywhere he goes.
Yeah, that's a great point. And he's accessible. There's no reporter, even if it's a hostile reporter, he's not afraid to stop and answer questions and give his side of the story, which seems to be literally the polar opposite of the current ticket, which doesn't seem to engage except in scripted moments, careful moments.
There's so much about Donald Trump, and I'm an old Reagan guy. I'm a Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan guy. But Trump's policies, his style is his style, but his policies are so clean in terms of what he does, what he believes. And I think there's a lot that people don't know even about the character of the man. I have spent a large part of my life, as you know, John, working closely with law enforcement and on counter narcotics. And I've always thought it's poignant that Donald Trump lost a brother to addiction, and that it hurt him. You could even tell in the only 1 or 2 times he's ever talked about it, it hurt him that this happened. And, I think there's a depth there. I get stories behind the curtain at times of things that he does, some check he writes for somebody's mortgage. And I'm like, gosh, there is something about this guy that people are not seeing. And of course, even I am not seeing it, but I guess I think that he has grown enormously, and I think the average American can't deal with 9% inflation and 22-year record high interest rates. They just can't deal with it anymore, John. We're struggling. It doesn't matter what your profession is, and of course AMAC works a lot with older Americans. Their savings are disappearing at 10% a year. How much of that do you have to take before you say, you know what, I may or may not like the guy, but his policies are going to preserve my family and protect my daughters and granddaughters, and I'm not going to go with the other crowd.
Yeah, no, that's really a very powerful moment. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. More of our exclusive interview with Bobby Charles right after these messages.
With Audible, there's more to imagine when you listen. Whether you listen to stories, motivation, expert advice, any genre you love, you can be inspired to imagine new worlds, new possibilities, new ways of thinking. And Audible makes it easy to be inspired and entertained as a part of your everyday routine without needing to set aside extra time. As an Audible member, you choose one title a month to keep from their ever-growing catalog. Be inspired to explore your inner creativity with Viola Davis's memoir, Finding Me. Find what piques your imagination with Audible. New members can try Audible free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/imagine or text Imagine to 500-500. That's audible.com/imagine or text Imagine to 500-500.
This episode is brought to you in part by Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, cleaning, and even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who save by switching save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who save with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
All right, folks, welcome back. More of our exclusive interview with Bobby Charles. I've said over and over again, I think it comes down to 3 I's. The I of inflation, the I of insecurity, which includes the border crime and the world, and the I of insanity, which is there are just certain things that Kamala Harris stands for that we don't want tampons in boys' bathrooms. We don't want men and girls sports. And people look at it like that's just 2 bridges too far for me. And I think if the Republicans just keep working those 3 subjects, they end up with a really great situation because the American people are with them on all 3 of those subjects.
Yeah. Well, I think in some ways, John, this at every level of government, local, the state legislature here in Maine is critically important, and the Republicans probably need to hold it if they're going to preserve the Maine values. They need to flip it in order to preserve the Maine values. At the state level, you have a number of gubernatorial legislative races, and then, of course, you've got the Congress, the House and the Senate, and then, of course, the president, vice president. In all of these races, in many ways, I think this is I'm trying to think of a new way to say very, 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 very important year. I mean, it's a year, John, in which if we don't sit up and understand that we got to go vote, we got to vote for the people, whoever they are, that we think represent our values. We cannot sit back and imagine that other people are going to protect our way of life, and I use that word broadly. Basically, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I was taken by a Pew poll the other day that indicated that that 37% of the American people did not vote in either 2018, 2020, or 2022. So lots of people sit home on the couch. That's a huge margin. That margin would have swamped any race in any state, including at the national level. So we need to get up and understand that the only way you protect a republic is to defend it by voting.
Yeah, no, that's such a great thing. You can't win a football game if you're sitting on the bench. You got to get in the game. And I think that's what is so exciting about what AMAC is going to do in Long Island in about 15, 16 days from now. The latest boot camp for boomers. I'm going to be there. Lee Zeldin is going to be there. I heard today that Kirk Cameron, good friend of mine, going to be there. We did some book tours together. For those who are going to show up, what's the day look like for you?
Well, I think we're going to have an incredible collection of panels. It's in a great venue, and this could be. It's kind of central so that a lot of people can get to it. And honestly, it could be the best one they've ever done because they have a star-studded set of panels. They have we're right at this moment when a whole bunch of things are going to happen. 2 or 3 days after that event, you have Trump facing potential sentencing. You have early voting. There are 6 states that begin in September, and there are 9, I believe, that begin in October. And so you've got a tremendous sort of, I don't know what I'd call it, vortex. And so I would encourage anybody that's within driving distance, never mind, you want to take an effort and really get close to the action to come to that boot camp for boomers. It's easy to get to amac.us, and then you sign up. And John, I am truly of the view that this is ours to lose, as in the American people's to lose. This election is about whether or not we teach ourselves and we take seriously this idea that the founders passed forward, that every generation, it's on their shoulders. I mean, as Reagan himself said, it's up to every generation to protect freedom. And so this boot camp for boomers is a way to get yourself educated about what that really means to protect freedom in your own, community, in your own town, your own state, and of course at the national level.
That freedom was poignantly highlighted, or the risk to it, just a couple of days ago when Mark Zuckerberg belatedly, and I do mean belatedly, admitted that the Biden administration was relentlessly pressuring him over Facebook over the last 3 years to censor Americans' opinions. No, it wasn't about foreign disinformation like we're always being told. It is Americans' opinions, their ability to debate things like vaccines and COVID solutions and COVID lockdowns. When you see that, when you see France just arrested the co-founder of Telegram because he wasn't moderating what France considered disinformation, when you see people threatening Elon Musk that he should get arrested for interviewing Donald Trump, those unalienable rights that we always have been assumed and we're going to be safe our entire lifetime, they're in the crosshairs right now, aren't they?
They are. John, to take it as quickly as I can, I think the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth, the Fifth, and the Sixth are under intense pressure right now. And what the Zuckerberg letter did is it was like a confessional, because the Oversight Committee, which I used to work for, Jim Jordan, really quite vigorously pursued whistleblowers to the point and documentation until it was made crystal clear that the FBI was putting pressure on high tech to block all the news that would get Trump elected. And in fact, I think what's really coming out now is that this overblown idea that the Hunter laptop was Russian disinformation, the suppression of everything that they suppressed, and the failure to allow responses on the other side in the final weeks and months of that election. And beware, because other kinds of bad behavior could happen right now. But that unbelievable stepping on the First Amendment probably did turn the election in 2020. And in reality, what this confession is it's a confession that Jordan was right, that the Republicans were right, that there was a complete censorship and violation of the First Amendment guarantees that individual Americans, never mind those running for office, should have expected to be honored. The Second Amendment, of course, is under constant pressure. The Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth I mentioned together in one swatch because we have a new superseding indictment that is essentially a rewritten indictment to try to bring the Republican presidential candidate and throw him in prison on the exact same charges as before, which are completely hokum. I mean, what they've done is that the Supreme Court said that a president has to have immunity for official acts. It is very clear that taking a classified document that many presidents have had in their possession, making it clear to the government that you have it after office, an administrative act at best, was an act officially taken. So was a speech given by Trump, which, of course, a different Supreme Court decision reinforced that idea. But what they've done is they basically recrafted this indictment of Trump, making it seem that these are all private acts. Well, they're not private acts. The Supreme Court ruled for a reason that public acts are not official acts are not subject to criminal prosecution. So there is a craven, I would say, really almost a totalitarian streak in this Justice Department. I mean, they are they are determined to put this guy in prison. And I say, what kind of government is it that says they're working for me, and yet they want to put a freely nominated, vindicated by the Supreme Court nominee in prison before the election and perhaps after the election? I mean, I just, it makes me shudder. So that is the Fourth Amendment. They went into his house. They, really showed overwhelming and unnecessary force in scaring people around him, in going in. It violated the Fourth Amendment, I think, constitutionally. The Fifth Amendment is due process and equal protection. Well, equal protection. Did you see Joe Biden facing that same kind of? No, he was just an elderly old fellow who's a good-hearted guy that we need to run off the rails as soon as people lose faith in him and put someone else in office. I guess I look at this, John, and I say this in many ways is an existential election, because rights that are foundational to the republic, the first, and by the way, it's not just speech and press, it's also faith, religion, freedom to worship is at risk. The second is at risk, keep and bear arms. The fourth, not being secure in our homes and papers. The fifth, again, which is the application of due process and equal protection to us at the federal level. And the sixth, which is fair trial. So all of those things are at risk in this election. And I think that, for one reason, is one reason why Robert Kennedy Jr. Shifted over, and frankly, I think his father and his uncle would probably have shifted over. So it's an important moment for the republic.
It is. The stakes are high, and the America as we've known it is in danger of changing, maybe irreparably. And I think that's why every person needs to get in the game and make a decision, vote, and do what they can this election to have their voice heard. That's what makes the boot camp for boomers in Long Island so excited. I can't wait to be with you there in just a couple of weeks, folks. In the meantime, you can say thank you for all that Bobby does, all the wisdom that he brings to these conversations and to every other conversation he goes and attends to, all of the discounts you get from AMAC, all of the opportunities for civic engagement, being an election observer, contacting your members of Congress, your legislature, your city council on issues that matter. The best way to say thanks is to go to amac.us/justnews, amac.us/justnews, and go get a membership for 1 year for $1. That's an amazing deal. 1 year, $1. You can't even get a soda for $1 or a coffee for $1. You're going to get a whole year of the AMAC community. And that's what it is. You're not joining a service. You're joining a community of patriots. Go do it today. Say thank you. You'll get discounts. You'll get a weekly podcast, monthly magazine. There's so many amazing benefits. But the best benefit is knowing that you're standing shoulder to shoulder with people like Bobby Charles and me and others who care about the country, and we want to save it. We know it's our watch. We're on the wall right now. It's our job to make sure that freedom survives to another generation. So today, go do me a favor. Go to amac.us/justnews right now. Bobby, as always, amazing conversation. I always feel smarter when I come out of this time together. Thanks so much for joining us today.
I really appreciate it, John. And, this would be a great moment as we come into the fall and kids are going back to school and the summer comes to a close, to give 5 gifts for $1 each to the 5 people you think are
$5 is cheap.
Exactly. They're going to think you paid $30 or $50 a pop, and you're going to get a beautiful magazine and you get all these economic benefits. And I honestly think AMAC is the best untold story in the nation. It ought to be 50 million people because it really delivers everything it promises. And gosh, in a world where we're facing an accountability crisis, the antidote is AMAC.
Wow, that's so awesome. I was out, I think it was in Phoenix a couple of weeks ago, and someone pointed to the wall and said, "I'm a card-carrying member too," and I knew exactly what they're saying. It made me smile because I've been saying that a lot lately. It's just such a great community, and I am honored to be a part of it, and to call you a friend as well, Bobby. You are such a treasure to your country. Great to have you on today, and we'll get you back next week. I'm sure we'll have some more fun stuff to talk about.
Thank you so much, John. I love your show.
I got you, buddy. All right, folks, that wraps up another edition of John Solomon Reports, the podcast from Just the News. A big thank you to our 2 guests, Seb Gorka and Bobby Charles. A big thank you to AMAC, our great sponsor. Go to amac.us/justnews if you want to get a 1-year membership for $1. Give it as a gift. You can get 5 of them as a gift, as Bobby said. $5, 5 gifts. What a great gift. Also, remember, we broadcast every day from the wiredtofishcoffee.com studios. Go to wiredtofishcoffee.com today. Use the promo code JustNews. You're going to get 10% off their new dark roast, the original morning blend, my Arabica favorite blend now, but it's the official coffee of Just the News. All you got to do is go right now to wiredtofishcoffee.com/justnews to take advantage of that incredible discount. And remember, every time Wired to Fish Coffee makes a profit, they give 25% of it back to faith groups and to conservation groups, 2 causes that matter personally to me as an outdoorsman and a Christian. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with regular programming. Until then, God bless you and have a great night.